Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. I did a post tonight on the tropics because the Atlantic tropical hurricane season has been quiet since mid-June. We had that big burst of three tropical storms in a span of about 2 weeks at the end of May through mid-June, and then it's just been quiet since then. And this is not very unusual. And also, we don't want to forget Hurricane Alex, which was back in January. Meanwhile, the Pacific, which was asleep up until the beginning of July, has now produced three tropical storms, and we also have a system that looks like it's going to become a depression in the next day or so. But what I wanted to show you was that at least going into the peak period, which will be August and September, things are a little different than they were last year. First off, right here we have the ocean water temperatures, and just a couple of things that I want to point out here with regards to that. First off is that these are the actual water temperatures, and you can see there's a large area of water temperatures greater than 27 degrees Celsius, and that covers most of the tropical Atlantic and then most of the western Atlantic up to off the Virginia, North Carolina coast. You can see that's the Gulf Stream there. And of course, our waters here have warmed considerably. We've seen temperatures jump from the low 60s to the low 70s in a matter of days, and we have water temperatures now that are rather warm for this time of year. And also we have pockets of 30 degrees Celsius water temperatures in the northern Gulf of Mexico. So in terms of the water temperature profile, the conditions, that condition is quite favorable. Now, I just want to point out that last year the water temperatures were well above normal in the Atlantic, but there were other things, particularly the upper air conditions, which were very much unfavorable for development. Now, we're going to translate this to where these temperatures sit in terms of normal. And most of the Atlantic is running near or a little bit above normal, particularly much above normal is off our coastline. And that, I think, is a result of the fact that over the last month and a half, we've had a persistent period of winds coming in from the east. And with the warmer waters that are usually offshore, that warmer water is pushed back westward. Now, there is a pocket of below normal temperatures sitting well offshore, but that just pretty much kind of equalizes everything here in terms of the actual water temperatures themselves. But much of the Atlantic running near normal. Now, we have this big pocket of below normal temperatures off the coast of Europe and Western Europe, and we're going to keep watching this as it continues to drift southward. We also have a pool of below normal temperatures off the African coast. Now, this might perhaps stifle initial development here, or particularly if this water continues to drift southward and this area were to grow. But that doesn't mean that those systems can't generate from the warmer waters that are out to the west. I think the more important condition to look at, however, are the upper air conditions, the winds at the very top of the atmosphere going up to 30,000 feet and above. And when we look at the profile of those upper winds across the Atlantic, this is the actual current wind shear profile. And one of the big differences we've noticed that pretty much almost all of last season through the Gulf of Mexico and through much of the Caribbean and even through the tropical Atlantic was dominated by wind shear winds of 50 knots or up to 50 knots or more at the highest levels of the atmosphere. And this rips tropical systems apart if they develop, and on a whole, they prevented a lot of systems from developing because of the wind shear. But it's much different this year. We have a large area of light wind shear. Again, this is current conditions. A lot of the Gulf of Mexico and much of the Atlantic is in a light wind shear environment. The winds in the Caribbean are a little stronger in the southern Caribbean, and also for the time being in the tropical Atlantic, we have stronger wind shear, but we don't have the extreme wind shear like we did last year. So even though the Atlantic is quiet, this is very typical for this time of year. Usually from mid to late June to about mid to late July is just a very quiet time in general. I think that's probably a sign that this is just going to be a more normal season as opposed to last year. And we certainly do not have an El Nino profile in terms of the wind shear here at all. It's almost completely the opposite of that. So just a couple of points to put out there as we are moving into mid-July. The key is going to be how this changes over the next couple of weeks, and of course going into August and September. If the light wind shear pattern increases, and I'll just push it over toward the GFS toward the latter part of the period, which is at the end of July, and you'll notice that much of the Atlantic east of the Leeward and Windward Islands, very low wind shear environment. There's very low wind shear environment in the Gulf of Mexico, and very low wind shear environment in the tropical Atlantic. So I think this opens the door to a more active hurricane season this season than we had last year. So I have a post on this, so go ahead and go to the website, meteorologistjoechaffe.com. Also, you can follow whenever tropical systems develop, and of course just general severe weather. S&S Storm Chasers is the place to be, so make sure you go to their website, ssstormchasers.com, and of course you can come to my website too, meteorologistjoechaffe.com.